It's going to be playing a big role in 2012, and that's why another race that was in Pennsylvania was actually key, that the Democrats are now touting as pretty much proof that they actually can win in a difficult election year. It was a special election that was won by a Democrat named with the last name of Kritz. What happened there?
Mark Kritz.
Well,
that was that to me, as somebody who thinks about congressional politics pretty frequently, that to me was the most interesting race of all last night, because this was a special election in the southwestern corner of Pennsylvania to replace a man named John Murtha, who some people around the country had come to know as sort of the king of earmarks, the king of what critics call pork barrel spending. He died in February. Mark Kritz was essentially his top aide in Pennsylvania, and was, as such, was sort of tarred with some of the bad baggage of Democratic control of Congress. He ran as a centrist, but he didn't shy away from the fact that he sort of knew how power was wielded. And the Republicans thought they had a sitting duck. They thought this is a culturally conservative part of the state. This is actually a district that went for John McCain 2 years ago. They had a decent candidate, they thought, who also had some Tea Party affiliations. And they boasted quite forcefully that this was the kind of race they can and would win. And they didn't even come all that close.
So
what that means...
Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying, so what that would seem to suggest is, if this is what the Republicans themselves were describing as the easy pickings in the midterm election, and even though they spent considerable amounts of money and they've recruited lots of people to go out there and knock on doors and stuff envelopes and do all the kind of field work that you need, and they still couldn't pull this off, there are many Republican insiders today who are saying, well, either this is just really bad staff work on the part of the Republican campaign operatives, or the big surge, the big wave that we've been talking about maybe isn't there as much.
Right. So to that point, actually, it seems that what happened yesterday is kind of a wash. I mean, there isn't one clear message that's coming out of what happened yesterday. You have both sides able to point to certain races and say, we won, and that means that we're going to win later in the fall, and then the other side saying much the same thing. So do you see a clear message that came out of yesterday?
Well, I would say there were 4 big races yesterday, and we've talked about 3 of them. Clearly, the anti-establishment candidate won in Pennsylvania, Sestak beating Arlen Specter, the 30-year veteran. Clearly, the anti-establishment candidate won in the Republican Senate primary in Kentucky, Rand Paul over Mitch McConnell's hand-picked candidate. And clearly, a solid majority of voters in Arkansas voted against their incumbent senator, although they didn't quite get rid of her. Arkansas's rules are that since no candidate got a clear majority, there's a runoff in 3 weeks. But in that first round, there was a candidate on the left, the lieutenant governor of Arkansas, and there was a candidate to Senator Lincoln's right, even more conservative, and they both ran against her and held her to, I think, about 43% of the vote. So it was 3 anti-establishment outcomes and 1 sort of pro-establishment outcome. So I think it's going to be an anti-establishment year.
Yeah, it seems very difficult, though, to come away and that Arkansas race that you mentioned actually turns out to be maybe the best show of all, that voters are really divided and very closely divided.
Well, yeah, we're still a closely divided country politically. You can't really claim that one party has true dominance, even though the Democrats do control the White House and both branches of Congress right now. The Republican Party has plenty of reasons to think that it's going to make solid gains this fall, that they're going to cut very significantly, I think, still into the Democratic majority in the House. Maybe there's still a chance that the Republicans could take the House this fall, and a longer shot, but they're still not totally counted out in the Senate, especially now that you have politics is always filled with surprises. What happened in the state next door to New York and Connecticut yesterday, this week, with the Attorney General, the seeming shoe-in Democratic candidate for the Senate up there, suddenly have to go on the defensive about whether he'd been exaggerating or even lying about his own record in Vietnam. That put that seat back in play potentially, so we got a long way to go.
Indeed, and it is still going to be a very interesting season. I want to thank you very much for joining me.